Good morning, everyone. Um, the title of this video, After My Own Heart, is, the phrase is, a man after my own heart, that sort of thing, meaning you connect with someone in such a way that you are simpatico with a view of the world, or there's something that connects you and another person. Uh, it's not a story of romance necessarily. It's a story of a shared romance, or a shared love, or a shared uh, way of experiencing things. And so there's a guy I did some graphic design work for who loves old fountain pens, and he and I share the thing we share is the inability to keep a piece of paper empty. We have to fill it. And he loves, based on samples of what he sent me, and I don't think he made them for me. He just looked around his desk, and this is not his stuff. I'm not showing his stuff because among some of the things he doodled on, first of all, I don't have his permission to show his doodlings, but he also, one of his doodles was part of his tax returns, because again, why not? It's a piece of paper. It's not full of ink yet. So it's really kind of funny. But what he loves to do, and what I love to do, is to make lines and words and shapes and doodles, and with a pen and ink. So here's some examples of my stuff, just to show you that I'm just not making it up. This is debris that I found on my floor or next to me here. I just, when I see a piece of paper, this is a tablet of how to do calligraphy, or calligraphy practice paper. And it's very smooth, and it's a paper that I hadn't used in a long, long time. And I just thought, well, gosh, this is lovely paper. I'll make use of that. So I'm not writing, clearly, I'm not writing any words. I'm not actually making calligraphy. I'm just filling it up with ink. And that's, I think, what he likes to do as well. He just the joy of using a pen, making a line, seeing what happens, feeling how the pen feels in your hands. It reminds me sort of the days when I was quite young, and my brother and I, this is before my little brother was born, but when my mom and dad and my brother and I would get in my dad's Austin Healey sports car, and we would drive, and we didn't go anywhere. That wasn't the point. We got in this car and we drove across the river and went through the sort of rural area of Bloomington at the time. Farms were there, not anymore, but they were. And it was just the joy of getting in a car and driving the car. We didn't go to the grocery store. We didn't go to the barber. We didn't do anything. We didn't. So the joy of pushing a pen around and looking at the line and feeling the way the pen feels in your hand, and the balance of the pen in your hand, without the need to actually write a word or to draw a picture. And as you can see, I do that a lot. Often it's sitting here at this desk. I'm testing out pens. I'm trying to find a pen for a customer. I'm trying to find a pen for myself. I'm trying maybe different inks. I'm this is like a Rorschach test. What do you see here? One of Wasky Squirrel's comments when he and we did a sort of back and forth video once where he spliced some videos of mine in as he was trying out pens I sent him to play with, and he would go back to mine and then to his and then to mine and then to his, and one of his followers said, looking at Mr. Gustafson's handwriting scribbles, looking at his scribbles makes me lose the will to live, which is entirely possible. I laughed out loud when I heard that because it was just really, really fun to hear. And here, for example, this is actually me. I started drawing a A and a C monogram. And then having done that, that's already done in my little brain. So then I filled it in with other little lines. I'm just doodling now. I'm just, the thing that I had to do is done, but the paper isn't full yet. I have to fill it with more ink. And so it happens all the time. And it happens on little tiny pieces of paper. This is Hewlett Packard paper that's for printing photographs on your computer, and it makes really, really neat. The ink sits on top, but it completely dries immediately. I don't know, I guess it's part of the way the paper is made, so that the ink from your inkjet will not just sit there and never dry. There's some sort of chemical reaction. But filling the page with mark making. Here's an actual drawing I did of a beer I was having at a restaurant, and clearly the beer was not on a funky checkered tablecloth, but I just decided to doodle or draw the beer in a certain way where I would be able to make as many lines as I wanted and make little dots and make little zigzags and checkerboards, crosshatchy bits. So anyway, right now I'm trying to put together some pens that this guy will like. He's going to the LA Pen Show, and our plan was to meet in advance and sort of let him try out some pens. He has some vintage pens already. He initially wanted from me a Franken pen, and if I can figure out how to make this one function, the nib, this nib function, where is the nib here? There it is. This nib work for him. I'll bring this out to him. It's a beautiful Victorian dip pen nib. I'm not going to send this to him, I don't think, in today's mail. I'm sending him some pens today for him to get a little primer of what's going on. It may take me a while to make this work. Franken pens are not as easy as some things. So, but anyway, one of the differences between the guy that I'm sending these pens to, and me, is he is fond of writing really big, and drawing sort of really big. The lines, they're big. They're just big. And will the selection of pens I give him the pleasure because of the size that he writes things? And I don't know if that's going to be the case. If you have I'm trying to find a pen that I have that's really wet and moppy. Hold on. Come on. How about this one? Let's see if this one works. He uses 51s. He uses many different pens. So he's used to, a firm nib that doesn't have any flexibility. He also loves pens that have flexibility. In general, if I were to hand him this pen and he were to write, let's say, hello. This is sort of how big he writes a word. Not like this. Sort of 3 times the size. Now, does he do that when he's filling out his tax returns? I didn't actually look at the numbers he wrote. I just saw he doodled over the whole thing. It was a copy of his returns, I'm sure. I promise I didn't look at anything other than that I saw they were tax returns. And, but yes, this pen can write big. It can write big all the time. There's nothing wrong with it writing big. But I have a feeling that he might prefer a nib that is fatter all the way around or can get extra fat. Maybe the thin line aspect of this nib won't resonate with him. But in a way, I'm hoping it will, because making this kind of a line is really very satisfying. Not to press down. I do have a feeling that, based on, again, what I've seen of him, of his noodles and his lettering, that he probably presses down more than you need to. That was a quote problem I saw with Wasky Squirrel, is he knew how to press down and he could get a thicker line on a flexible nib, but he didn't really know how to lift up on the pen. And part of the joy of using these vintage fountain pens, and maybe it doesn't work with modern pens as much, but with the vintage ones, the weight of the pen alone will make a line, and almost lifting up on the pen is what you want to do. And so the fine line, making the finest line, is something that might not come natural to Wasky Squirrel or to the guy that's getting these pens. And to many people, actually, I know that I watched them draw, and I watched them write, and I watched them test out a fountain pen. Many of them start out by applying some amount of pressure. The weight of their fingers and their hand and their fist and their arm are part of the finest line they make, rather than just the weight of the pen. Here, my hand is being held up by my pinky, and I'm just barely having the nib touch the paper. There's a couple of professional calligraphers I know who have a trick that they have shown me and shared with the world. In one case, the calligrapher used to be the calligrapher for the Queen of England. I don't know if he still works for George or not. Is that his name? King George III? What's his name? Anyway, the new king, whatever his name is. Something the third. Charles III, that's his name. What this guy did was he takes a piece of paper, a flat piece of paper. Do I have a piece of paper somewhere there we go. Here's the piece of paper. So what he does, he takes the paper and sort of pulls it across a corner of a table, you know, puts his hand on this and pulls it down as he's pulling it out. And what that does is causes the paper to have a curve. Let's see if I can do it here. Okay, I just did it. So it's slightly curved up. And what that does is now the paper is pushing up against the pen. So he actually uses, he has the pen above the paper. I mean, it's not even on the table. And it's the pressure of the paper pushing up against the pen nib that's creating the pressure for the ink to come out. So it's learning to just kiss the paper with the pen nib, not a slobbery French kiss. No, sort of the kiss that you would give to your aunt that you don't like. That kind of a kiss. Oh my God, she's coming to dinner. I can't believe it. Oh, for God's sake. You go up and it's not quite an ear kiss because moi. You have to have your lips make contact with her alligator skin or whoever it is you're kissing. I don't know. You know, a sloppy French kiss is this one. You don't want to do that to your aunt. You don't necessarily want to do it with your fountain pen either. Learn to appreciate the fineness. So anyway, but one of the things that I am going to think about as I select pens for this guy is, again, the size that he loves to fill a page. I imagine in his household, he does not have Post-it notes because they're not big enough. You might have, a Post-it note on the refrigerator door that says, get milk or something. And he'll have to use like 4 of them. MILK, because he writes so big. And there's nothing wrong with writing big. There's not one thing wrong with writing big, except you need a big piece of paper. But God, this pen is lovely. And it writes big really, really nicely. It's making a line right there. You can't see that line. Can you see there's a line there? Yes, you can. There is a line there. That's the kiss you give your aunt at Christmas once a year, whether you like it or not. Yes, this pen can be a sloppy kiss that you give someone else, hopefully more than once a year. But I don't mean to. I know that quite often my videos go right into the gutter, but it's so much fun in that gutter. Why not? Why not go there? So if anyone wants to buy pens from me, wants me to find pens for them, I should say, I feel more like I'm a matchmaker and a salesman. I do try to find a pen that will fit your needs, and your needs are going to be different from that person's needs or that person. You're all going to want different kinds of pens if you're using them. If you're a collector and you just need a blue duofold senior with a single band, I know how that works. I'm not selling a pen to you. I'm selling a pen to the people that write with them. So what helps me is seeing how you write, though. There's another guy here. I just found something that he sent me. This guy writes very, very tiny, and I don't know where he is. He stopped communicating with me. He and I don't think it was due to anything that I said or did. He was very keen on getting a certain kind of a pen, and for him, everything had to be correct. But it wasn't any pen that actually existed. I had to create a Franken pen for him that had all sorts of requirements that I wasn't able to do because what he was asking for didn't exist in any normal fountain pen. I can't even remember exactly what they were. It had to be a certain length, a certain diameter. The section had to be a certain. It was almost like the section had to be fatter than the barrel. So, sort of like dip pens. Sometimes you see with the cork on it. I don't remember what the issue was, but there were lots of things that got in the way. And I said, fly up here, spend a weekend, and we'll play. And maybe I can understand how he holds the pen, why he wants that thing. Maybe I can convince him that he doesn't necessarily need that thing that he wants. But then that was during COVID, and I think that's where we lost touch. But maybe I'll see if I can find him. He also, it was something about communication was also another thing. He didn't want to talk. No, he did talk. We did talk on the phone. I remember that. He didn't want to send pictures. That was it. I said, well, show me a drawing, a photograph of you holding a pen. He didn't want to do that. There was some basic thing I was looking for that would help me, and he wouldn't allow that. Look at me, say I'm wasting this piece of paper. This I could have used for my desert island diaries. Today I had another three-way with Mrs. Howell and Ginger. If that suddenly came out of left field, you have to check yesterday's video I made where I talked about that. So anyway, the case for this guy, who I'm going to try to select 10 or so pens that are all going to be different in terms of their nibs. I don't care what the pens look like. That's not part of my function here. I'm just want him to see the different nibs out there, and maybe these all are going to be things he's already seen and already tried, and maybe he already has in his collection. I know he has some pens in a collection, and I can see that they write in a certain way. But I want to try to give him as wide a spectrum as I can in terms of kind of a wet noodle nib, a very fine nib, maybe something that's vaguely stubby, maybe something that has only a little tiny bit of flex, and see how he works with them. And then that would help me maybe after we meet and before he goes to the pen show. He's never been to a pen show. And my plan was to meet with him the day before or sometime before and sit down and I'd see what he likes. And maybe I could aim him in a particular direction. Let's say let's say I discover he's left-handed. I know he isn't, but if someone is left-handed, I'll say, take my advice, look at Schaefer pens. Schaefer pens often have that slightly upturned Waverly nib, and if you write like this, it's smoother than if this was a Waterman pen or a Parker pen. Schaefer pens, because of the shape of their conical nibs, their Triumph nibs, had that upturned snout, and it's makes it easier for a lefty to use. If someone writes excruciatingly tiny, I'll say, well, look for accountant nibs. Look for extra fine nibs. Maybe look at Schaefer nibs there too and find their Feather Touch nibs. This isn't a Feather Touch, but it could have been. Feather Touch nibs often, not always, but often, are very, very fine. And they are really smooth for being very fine. Anyway, if there's anything I can do to help a pen fall into the right hands, I want to do it. That's a joy that I have in this crazy world, is to find a pen that will be used by someone who knows how to use it. This is a lovely pen. I would just wish it didn't have a piston fill. I don't fix those. And I don't trust, if it's working now, I'm not going to be able to fix it if it ends up not working tomorrow. So I sell it as a as-is pen. Or I'll take the nib out of this and put it in a different pen. So anyway, I have my work cut out for me. This is really a nice nib, by the way. And it's really fun on this pen, this size of a pen. Here's my loop. A Schaefer Jr., it says. But look at that. It's this nice, smooth, flexible nib. This might be a pen that I would use. Maybe I'll keep it as a starter pen. Someone's at my table at a pen show, and I'll say, okay, take I'll dip this pen in the ink and I'll say, write with this one. Tell me what you think. And they're going to say, oh, it's kind of nice. Okay, well, that's a good start. Tell me how you want the pen to be different. I wish that was finer lines, or I wish it could go thicker. And I say, okay. And show them the second pen. But this is good because it's mainly smooth. If I were to hand a lot of people a very fine nibbed pen, they're immediately going to say it's scratchy. Unless they've used vintage pens before, they'll say, oh, it's scratchy. Well, that's because it's fine. It's supposed to do that. It's supposed to be scratchy. But this is a good starter pen. So I'll keep that for my files. As well, because it's one that I can't fix. This one, I could hand this to someone, and a lot of people are going to say, I don't like this at all. Because right now it doesn't do any of this. It doesn't have the flexibility that's noticeable. It's also a little bit finer, and it might look anemic. The line it makes might look anemic to someone, and all of that is true. But it doesn't mean you can't do beautiful things with this thing. And maybe you have to learn to change your aesthetics to allow for the fine line to come to the fore. Um, think of a Chopin nocturne, or something, piece of music that's quite quiet. You don't have to have bombastic Wagnerian cymbals crashing every measure. Having a quiet word or letter is is good. So anyway, I have my work cut out for me. I'm going to try to find for this guy pens that are in the bigly, that write bigly, that make an interesting shape this way. So I'll write hello kitty. Now I'll write words that are sort of this big and make marks that are sort of that big with a pen. And what I'd like him to do is I'll do like what I did with Tristor the other day. I'll have a piece of paper. I'll have the name of the pen, Sheaffer. This is horrible paper, by the way. It bleeds, just sucks ink into it. But Sheaffer, brown stripe, whatever the pen is called. And then I'll do that. And then I'll show the range, thick to thin, thin to thick. And then there's room for him to sort of try to mimic this, I guess. Don't press down like you normally do, maybe, but try to mimic as best you can the range that I give you. And I don't want to change his handwriting because that's really not doable. But part of learning how to use a pen to its fullest, whether this is me or him or you or professional calligraphers or professional art. I showed an artist. I loaned him a pen of mine. I was drawing with him, a very good artist. And I said, you don't have to press down to make a line with this pen. Because he was used to present day modern fountain pens where you do have to press down. They almost require it to make the damn things work. And I said, just have the weight of the pen. And I held the pen like this over the paper. And I just drew like this. And he said, oh my God, I can't believe it. That line is so thin. And he just got excited about using a pen that could do that. And I know that I'll pick on Wasky Squirrel again, just because he's a friend of mine and he doesn't mind, I'm sure. He starts out, in fact, really with all the pens. When I met him in my house, I gave him a Maserati, and he only went up and down the block with it. He didn't take it out on the freeway, meaning he didn't really press down and get the full range because he was afraid to. And I said, no, you can press down to that much. He said, I'm afraid. And I said, no, don't be afraid. You can make a line that much. But he felt uncomfortable doing that. And maybe he's changed in the last couple of years, but there are some people that are afraid to press down too hard. And you don't want to press down too hard. You want to press down hard to make the line. And you stop when it's time to stop. And I'm a pretty good judge of where that stop line is, because I've tried so many pens and broken some pens by pressing down too hard, but there's a point at which there's this little tiny bit of resistance you feel where the pen says, okay, stop. I can hear its voice saying, okay, it hurts. So I stop. But I also said, you go from 0 to 60 with this pen, not from 20 to 40. So go from the 0 to 20 part. Practice that. And that requires, again, thinking what you're doing, lifting up on the upstroke, pressing down on the downstroke, up and down, and having that full range. I'm reading what Todd Merrill just said about things. Now, Todd, you're another person. I know that you might not like this about what I'm going to say about you. We can duke it out later. You're someone that when you write, you tend to, you're very good at going from, if the pen goes from 0 to 60, you're very good at 60 down to maybe 10. Less good with the 0 to 10 because you're a swashbuckler. You sort of parry and stab the paper almost. I'm exaggerating it. I know you understand, but your lines are this, I described as a swashbuckling staccato. Is that the right word I want? Stiletto, staccato. You say tomato, I say tomato. Where once the pen nib hits the paper, it's already, the pressure is already being applied, I think. And what I mean by the staccato is if you were to write the word fountain pen or fountain, Schaefer, that's a word you like writing a lot, Sheaffer, rather than having it with two strokes, the S and the Eaffer, you might turn this into maybe 3 or more strokes. You sort of divide the letters up and they're each a separate stroke. Am I describing it correctly? So there's a lot of this sort of stabbing the paper. And I'm using words that I know you understand. You'll take umbrage, is that the word? You'll object to my terminology, but I'm not very thoughtful this morning on what I'm doing. But yeah, sometimes the hairlines are there, but it's hard. When I'm doing calligraphy, if I'm actually writing calligraphy and I have a beautiful flexible nibbed pen, can I find a beautiful flexible nibbed pen with me? For God's sake. How about this one? Is this one going to be flexible? This one's somewhat flexible. Good. What I do, the capital of a word, John, let's say, I can make the thin and the thick on the capital letter because I'm making a drawing sort of the letter. When I'm doing the small letters, I don't have enough room to make that fine line as well. And I don't, I guess I could if I really, really use I see. I can't get that fine line even if I try. The when I write small letters and I write small, I'm pressing down already too hard. How do I make a line like that? Well, a line that's thin for me has to be fast. I have to make it fast. Yeah, I mean your handwriting is so amazing, Todd. It's just it's this. I wish I could think of a musician who sings or plays the way you write. Um, there's sort of a scatness to your. I think scat is a good word to uh, your delivery of the words tends to be jazzy and surprising, and it looks improvised, whether it is or not. Because I think if you did a page of Schaefer's, wrote page after page after page of Schaefer's, there might be one lowercase e that looks like another lowercase e. You know, you seem to change uh, sort of a style um, within a word. Bop, dio, and dweet low, swiddly dee. I don't know what you're talking about. Again, maybe you can make a video describing to the viewer how you might describe, a line of your words that you write. It's scat. Okay. It is scat. I mean, there's a way that you write that's really a joy to watch you do it, and it's a joy to look at. If you wrote me a letter, I don't know whether I would get through it in one sitting. I might have to take it in little doses because there's there's a lot of there's so much stuff going on within that one word. There's lines and there's paragraphs and there's sort of a swoosh crossing a T. There's a lot of activity going on, and it's really, really fun to look at. Um, but kind of hard for me. I think it would be kind of hard to read. My father had really beautiful handwriting, very artistic, and very difficult to read. My handwriting is impossible to read, but luckily I don't write people stuff. Scat syllables. Yeah. So anyway, I've got my my work cut out for me today. I hope I can put together 8 or 10 pens for this guy to send him out, showing again a range of pens. Smooth. This might be one of the pens. It's a lovely, beautiful pen with a little bit of variety of line. Beautiful pen, actually. To maybe an accountant nib. I'll send him an accountant nib or a nib that's like that. And at the end of a week of him trying out these pens, and I'll ask him to ignore what they look like. Well, I won't ask him to ignore what they look like. I'll ask him to pay attention to the nibs first. But this pen, unposted, this little tiny lady's pen, or we refer to as ladies' pens, vest pocket pens, ring top pens. We have to be woke. We can't say ladies anymore. We have to say ring top pens. The fact that it can sort of fit within my hand is really a very interesting feeling. I feel like I'm just right down there digging into the word. It's really fun. Do you ever do this, Todd? Do you like take a lady's pen or ring top pen and sort of hold it within your fist and make your little marks with it? I think it's sort of a very interesting feeling. A person ring top. So I'm for some reason Prager University is on my Instagram feed because they pay to annoy people. And there was one blurb that they have about toxic masculinity, and there was some woman, some female, I don't know what, was saying something like, why do we need men, blah blah blah. And of course all of the born again Christians that also are like that channel are saying, well, you need men because God commanded us to be one man, what, all this nonsense. But they were talking about toxic masculinity and how leftists like me are against toxic masculinity. And I'm against toxic anything. Anyway, so I mentioned that in a comment. I said, I don't feel I have to, if you want to follow the traditional male role of wandering around protecting your women, and I put that in quotes, and be cock of the walk. If you want to do that, that's fine. That's nothing wrong with that. But I don't march to that same tune. I don't have the need to do that. And then, so you had all these people, well, a couple of people, I don't want to say all these, but a couple of people that said that I was a waste to society because I am not wandering around with a puffed up chest, dragging some woman by the hair back to my cave. I mean, how am I causing the society to fall apart because I choose to not do that? And I said, well, if that's an example of toxic masculinity right there, calling someone a waste to society by not doing this. Instead, you could have said, gee, that's great. The last thing we need is another human on the planet. You don't need to, multiply. That's great. No, he didn't. I'm a waste to society. Yeah, well, posting a big pen or not posting it is still, outside of your fist. Try a small pen and sort of get it inside your entire hand. It's sort of the way it focuses your entire vision, or to me, my entire vision on right on that nib, right on that. I think I would have to always write kind of small like this. I don't think I would feel comfortable doing it this way. No, it doesn't make sense. But it does make sense to do this. So Anyway, I'm hoping this guy, when he looks at these pens, he may say, "Gee, I love that gold pen. It's in my hand. I like the way it sparkles. I like everything about it. I want all my pens to be gold." That's 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 great. If that's what if that's a realization he has. I don't think it will be, but he may decide that all the pens he likes best are the ones that are sort of big and fat. That's great too. Hello, Billy Jacob. There was one guy that would go to the Bromfield Pen Shop, which is now the Appleboom pen store, but it's now closed. They closed it. So that's done. I don't know, Todd, whether you heard that, but he's sold it. I mean, he's got moved out. So I guess Boston no longer has a pen store. It's up to you. Have to buy stuff from me now, and other pen collectors. But anyway, this guy would go into the pen store, Bromfield Pen Shop, and he'd bring a micrometer, and he would measure the barrel with his micrometer, and if it was that amount or over or bigger, he would buy the pen. And I said, well, why would he need a micrometer? Can't he just tell the difference in his hand if he requires it to be that dimension? He should be able to feel that immediately in his hand. He shouldn't have to measure it first. But maybe it's one of these things where he can't tell immediately. It's only after writing for a day and a half that he starts going into some sort of crazy space because his pen isn't big enough. So maybe he knows that he can't tell automatically. He needs to have that measurement. So you cock-a-hoop. You feel like you're playing golf. What does that have to do with? I'm just looking at the comments here. One of the things I'm trying not to do, though, is to change anyone's opinion too much. Like the toxic masculine guy that was all bent out of shape with me, and he thinks men only should walk around strutting their stuff and dragging women by their hair back to their cave and producing children. Of understanding the value or the right for someone to not follow that routine is all I want. So with the pen, you might want to write big and fat all the time, but try a thin pen out and try a short pen, try a skinny pen, and try to let the pen play a part in how you're writing or what you're writing, or there is a reason why this pen was made. There is a reason why accountant nibs were made. They were made for accountants, clearly. But I like it too. If this guy likes making lines as much as I do, which I know he does, I would think that the joy of making a big fat line is one thing, and a joy of writing a really, really fine line is another. They're both equally, they both can be fun. I'm sure, I don't know who Keith Moon is with a drumstick or what he does with a drumstick, but I imagine Todd knows. And I can't imagine that he would take offense, but I'll let him respond to that. Cock-a-hoop. Do I know you, Cock-a-hoop? What is your real name? I can't imagine it's Cock. Honey, what do we name him or her? It's like the toxic masculinity guy. He would name his son Cock. Cock. A. Hoop. The third, Junior. Hourglass section, yeah. So this is all fascinating. The skyline section looks like that, hourglass. There's some that are straight, like a Waterman 12. There's some that are like a Parker jackknife pen is shaped like this, where there's this sharp sort of ridge there, a berm. We could call it a berm. There's some pens like the Waterman 12. There's nothing to keep your fingers from sliding into the nib. There's no little break. The hourglass section, a longer section, maybe allows for your hand to move up and down the section a little bit, which is kind of neat. One of the reasons that I love or that I hate modern pens is they often have a section and where it meets the barrel is like this, because it's, a metal barrel, and there's this big difference between this and that, because the modern lathes can't figure out how to make something less ugly. And my fingers, reaching over the top, it's like if I had to do calligraphy, and sometimes there was one case I had to do calligraphy on the inside of a lid of a box. It was a box of chocolates going just to people, and having my hand hit this thing, and it just really made it very, very hard for me to do the work because this edge was in my face. So what I ended up doing to make it somewhat easier is I took another box top where at least I didn't have that edge sawing into me. And a modern fountain pen with that cliff that goes from the barrel to the section was like this thing digging into my finger. And I had to sort of reach around this thing to hold it. I would probably, if I had a modern fountain pen, I'd probably hold it back here, like I'm doing this one, which is fine. You can do that too. But if you have to hold it up here like this, it's just bad. More Moore fountain pens often had a very long section. Rob Morrison loves that long section on Moore pens. I don't know if that's the reason he loves it or if it's more just aesthetic. He likes that. I'll have to ask him next time I see him. The Parker 51. Do I have any 51s here? have a great section. There's nothing getting in the way. Yeah. With these, among the many nice things of these metal pens is the thinness of the whole thing, from the tippy top of the clip or the ring top all the way down to almost the nib. It's almost the same all the way along. There's a little tiny ridge here. There's little tiny ridges there. You can hear them. But it's generally you're writing with a stick, a cylinder. And there's something really, really nice about having that. There's no bumps getting in the way. So again, this guy that's getting these pens tomorrow might say, God, I love that about those walls. I'm going to buy only wall metal pens now because of that. Because I love sort of moving the pen up and down in my hand as I'm thinking of the next word I'm going to write. And it's kind of nice not having that big bump getting in my way. Can you imagine someone saying that, Todd Merrill? Yeah, cross ballpoint pens were just evil. Their vertical lines just made your fingers just slide down. So is Cock-a-Hoop still in the room? Cock-a-Hoop. A waste. I am a waste to society because I'm not getting into fistfights at the bar, impregnating women, and adding to the population. Yeah, the Waterman CF was an interesting animal when it came out. And I think, especially the ones that were really, really fancy, reminded me of automobiles of the 60s, or 50s and 60s, the ones that were two-tone, that looked like saddle shoes. The roof was white and the body was beige, and they had fins and they had, pinstriping. They all sorts of, to drag my knuckles more. I don't know. It's just pretty strange. Let me see if I can find a CF. I think I have them I have one or two in my collection. Why, you ask? Because it's there. I guess I don't. I must have one somewhere. Seems to me I kept one that was like the fanciest one that they made, just as an example of how they went. Bic is better. The cross pen is too thin, and again the vertical lines suck. Well, I guess I don't have one. I know I have one somewhere. I just don't know where it is. Well, later today, I will be putting together a video showing the 8 or 10 pens I'm sending to this guy in California for him to try out. And I think all of them will be for sale to him if he wants them. He may only want a juicy Waterman 12 of the lot. But I am hoping that he'll appreciate. He doesn't have to like, but I'm sure he'll appreciate the variety of nibs. Will I send him this one? This is the one that has the broken lever. I might just say, just dip the pens, don't fill them up. I mean, I'd like to have him try out this nib. I can put this nib in a different pen, I guess, but it's a lovely little stub. The lever box is broken on this one, so I was just going to keep it for myself, but I guess I can throw the nib, put the nib in another pen. The 5.52.5 LEC. Yeah, I only have an 05 5.2.5. Where is it? It's supposed to be here. It is here. Right there. AL Mellow. I do remember buying this on. Okay, why is that doing that? Why did that happen? I love the name on this pen, Mellow. And it writes the way the name sounds. It writes in a mellow way. Very smooth, wet, and flexible. AL Mellow. The only problem with this pen is the cap is really loose on the back here. It can easily fall right off. Doesn't have that snug feeling I like. These pens, I look at them and I always think of Sheaffer lady pens, ring top. Not ladies' pens. What did we call them? Pens of ring top. Like this one. They always seem, the cap seems too short. Person of ring top. See, this is another one that I don't generally like a pen that has the cap barrel meeting to be right here, which is almost every pen, but sometimes it bothers me. Other times it doesn't so much. I'm sending this one off to him to try. He'll like that one, I'm sure. I hope he likes all of them and doesn't. And if he wants to buy them all, that's fine. But my plan is to have him not buy all of them. Now here's a 412.5, or 472, whatever they call this one. Why it has those cuts in it? Why would it have those cuts? Who would have done that? Todd Merrill. Why did someone do that? Do you see that? Yeah, the tuckaways are cute. They remind me of the black one. The all black one reminds me of a little one-eyed penguin. Tuckaway right here. This pen is beautiful. I really like this one, even with its whyever this was put in there. I wonder if someone had designed a little medallion to go over the end, like a little metal thing with initials on it or something. And the only way to attach it was to carve into it like that. Very strange. You know, the tuckaway. Mellow, you're going back in the drawer, as is this one. Here's another 452. Not an LEC, LTL. I think I have a 412.5 LEC. Let me find it. Oh, my. I can't seem to find it. So Who knows? It's right here. Except this isn't the one I was thinking of. I think the one I have had a name on it. Wow, this nib is just prickly fine. This must be an accountant nib. Why does it tear the paper? This has like one molecule of iridium on it that's shared by both tines. And I think this nib has been damaged. So stiff. It's really stiff and really fine. Now there's iridium on the top. You really do see it on the top. There's a whole pile of it there, but on the bottom it might have been worn in such a way, or the nib might have looked sort of like that. So there's, from the top, you see this much iridium. On the bottom, you see only sort of that much iridium. So either this much or some amount is missing, so there's only that much left. It's just very, very small amount. God, it's just crazy, really stiff. This nib is amazingly hard. Nothing, no movement there. This, and you can hear it. You know, a way to tell whether a nib is broken is, you know, when you're done writing, if you do that and you see sort of tears in the paper, then it's tearing the paper. You don't want that to happen. It's just crazy though, this nib. I'll have to have my friend Ted write with this one. I wonder if he can do the surgery on the brain of an infant using this one. Maybe it was just misaligned. It feels smoother here. The finest pen I have can make 150 distinct lines between that, and that. I measured an inch out on my paper, and I just made lines like this 150 times. That's pretty thin, because you have, zooming in with your electron microscope, you have a line, and then a space, and another line. With my loop, most of those lines are distinctly different. Anyway, so much for that. Oh, I wonder if it's up here. The pen I'm thinking of was one of the pens that I made a pen portrait of. And it was, I put the pen cap was shown over in the top of a coat, and it was this long frock coat of this very young man, John Singer Sargent painting. And it was one of the paintings that was just in the show. I think that I remember the Collins was the last name. I know that the pen has a name Collins on it. And where is it? This will bother me all day long until I find it, because I don't think I sold it. So it might be in a box. It might be in 2 or 3 other drawers. Drives me crazy. Be good, everyone. Thanks, Todd. See you later.